Going orange. That's what the Liberal Democrats will be hoping for come June the 24th, as they launch their by-election campaign in Honiton. Leader Sir Ed Davey headed down to Devon to greet the parliamentary candidate Richard Foord, who hopes to replace the former MP Neil Parish, who sensationally quit after being caught looking at pornography in the House of Commons. Richard lives in Ufcombe with his wife and family and served for 10 years in the army, graduating from Sandhurst, reaching the rank of Major. Sir Ed will certainly be hoping Richard can be the cream of the crop and give the Prime Minister a major headache come election day.
Great Devon cream. Great Devon ice cream.
Clotted cream, no less.
Not good for my diet, but...
Liberal Democrats are clearly the challengers to the Conservatives in this by-election, and to have a fantastic candidate like Richard Foord, who's local, who has a military background, and who's going to be a local champion for people in Tiverton and Honiton if he's elected. It's just so exciting, and the buzz on the streets we've been getting from people talking to business owners here on the high street, but also people stopping us in the street. I think there's an excitement here, and that makes it special.
Of course, it's a bit of an unexpected by-election as well. How has Neil Parish's actions rippled through Westminster?
Well, I think unfortunately there's quite a lot of scandals in Westminster at the moment, and there is one Conservative MP who's had to resign, as well as Mr Parish. There's another who people think ought to resign, and of course there's someone who's been arrested on a very serious allegation. And so there are a lot of scandals, and it's horrible, it's awful. The behaviour of some MPs is just unacceptable. And I think the Prime Minister needs to take a lead, because he has allowed unacceptable behaviour and a culture of people getting away with it to get grip. And I think the Conservative Party has got a lot to answer.
How does it feel to be the favourites going into this Tiverton and Honiton by-election, according to many of the bookies?
It's a bit surprising, to be honest, because there was such a huge Conservative majority here last time. For Liberal Democrats to overturn that majority would be an amazing performance. But clearly, everyone recognises that it's the Liberal Democrats who are challenging the Conservatives. No one is disputing that anymore. And if we can campaign well, listen to people, reflect their concerns on the cost of living, on the NHS, on farming issues, I think there is a real chance we could pull something off. But until we've got on the doorsteps and talked to people, it's impossible to say. It is a challenge, but we're up for it.
And of course there's the idea of a pact between the Liberal Democrats and Labour. Should we expect to see Labour in Tiverton and Honiton take their foot off the gas slightly? Are you expecting that?
Well, there's no pact or deal now or in the future. The reality is people know that the Liberal Democrats are the challengers here. We've got a great tradition in the West Country. Everybody knows that. Just earlier this month we won control of Somerset, just over the border from this constituency. It had been run by the Conservatives. People thought the Conservatives would win it, but Liberal Democrats won it, as people across Somerset switched to the Liberal Democrats. Here in this constituency, just a few weeks ago, we won a council by-election in Clumpton South. So the evidence, the voice of voters in the West Country is coming behind the Liberal Democrats. And I think voters, whether they're from a Labour tradition or indeed from the Conservative tradition, are saying, you know what, I think it is time to vote Liberal Democrat.
You wake up on June the 24th, although I'm sure you'll be up all night like the rest of us, and Wakefield has been lost by the Conservatives, and so have Tiverton and Honiton. Boris Johnson, what should he do in that circumstance?
Well, I think Boris Johnson should have resigned before. I think Boris Johnson should resign today. And when Liberal Democrats beat him, and I hope we will, I'm not going to take anything for granted, but if we do manage to pull this amazing result off here, then that should send a message that he should go.
What's your message to all those voters between now and the election who are undecided and are looking for inspiration to make their decision?
If people in Tiverton and Honiton want a local champion, someone who knows this area, who's going to be a strong voice for them in Parliament, take up issues like the cost of living, heating oil, for example, LPG, which so many people depend on, and the government done nothing to help them with those costs. If they want a local champion who understands the problems of farmers, if they want a local champion who's going to campaign on the NHS, the need for more investment in doctors and ambulances and NHS dentists and so on, they need to vote Liberal Democrat, they need to vote for Richard Foord.
very much for coming. What an amazing reception.
Despite a huge majority to overturn from 2019, the Liberal Democrats are optimistic and remain the bookies' favourites to win. However, they are taking nothing for granted, with just over a month to go before the polling day.
I don't know about bookies' favourite, and honestly, we're not looking at those sorts of odds. We're taking absolutely nothing for granted at all. It's going to be an uphill struggle. The Conservatives have a majority, or did have a majority in 2019, which was very sizable, and so it's going to take an awful lot more activists than those that you see behind me right now in order for us to win this one. But we're very determined to win it on behalf of our fellow constituents.
Just how exciting is it to have Ed Davey come and help launch your campaign for the Tiverton and Honiton seat?
Well, Lewis, it's certainly really very exciting, but what I'm most excited about the opportunity that is presented by this by-election to send a message to Boris Johnson's Conservative government that Devon is fed up with being taken for granted.
We obviously know the history of the by-election. How do you think that is going to play into the constituency?
I don't think it matters a whole lot. I mean, the fact is that Neil Parish did the decent thing and resigned. I think a lot of people would consider that perhaps Boris Johnson ought to have followed that good example, and when he received his fixed penalty notice for parties in Downing Street, might have considered doing the same. But actually, no. What really matters at this by-election is that we've got the opportunity here in Tiverton and Honiton to send the Johnson government a message that the price rises here in this constituency and elsewhere are really causing some real pain and hurt. Families are really struggling.
As well as the national picture, there's obviously a lot of local things going on. What do you hope to take to Westminster if elected and fight for in the constituency?
Well, what we've found in the constituency is some really quite empty promises over the last decade. I mean, there's been talk for a long time now of a bypass at Axminster. A railway station at Columpton is something that I've got press clippings at home, probably written by you, where it was suggested in 2012 that we would have a new railway station in Columpton, a new school at Tiverton. These things are really desperately needed now. But instead, what we're seeing and what we have seen under a Conservative Boris Johnson-led government is housing without the infrastructure. Sometimes there are promises of infrastructure, sometimes there are promises of roads and schools and railway stations, but actually instead what we're seeing is housing.
And campaigners are already out knocking on doors and finding out what the mood is like on the doorstep.
It's really good. People really want change. We're getting a really good response here. Many people are supporters, but also others who are considering voting for us. So I think it's looking really good for us here. They identify that it's between us and the Conservatives, and if they want change, that they're supporting the Lib Dems. So yeah, very good.
Well, actually, the reception's been really good. I've just had a lovely conversation with a chappie who's a lifelong Liberal, soft Labour supporter, but mainly Liberal Dem, and I think he might be quietly optimistic following that discussion, so we'll have to see.
I'm finding that actually people are really positive about the change that they can perhaps get with this by-election. What we're hearing on the doorstep is that people are sick to death of being taken for granted by the Conservatives. They don't trust Boris Johnson, and actually what they think is it's time for a change, and they're looking at lending us their votes this time.
The other contenders, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, are yet to declare their candidates, and even Neil Parish hasn't ruled himself out of standing as an independent. So the eyes of the national media will be on the constituency in the coming month in what should be a fascinating election campaign. Lewis Clark, Devon Live, Honiton.